Welcome back to Still Mind Path. We're all about navigating life through the lens of the Dharma. If you're looking for a calmer mind and a more meaningful life, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Let's get right into it. There is an old observation about water that when it is too clear, when it is filtered of every speck of silt and shadow, no fish can live there. It is too sterile, too exposed. I've been thinking about how often we apply that same harsh clarity to the people in our lives. We scrutinize every word, we weigh every action on a scale of absolute right and wrong, and we wonder why, in the end, we find ourselves standing in a very quiet, empty room. It's a strange thing, isn't it? This drive we have to be correct, to win the point, to prove that we were the ones who were wronged. We win the argument with a partner, or we finally get the last word in with a sibling, and for a moment, there is that sharp, cold spark of victory. But then the air in the room changes. The heat of the connection begins to cool. We won the battle, but we lost the person. We forget, I think, that life isn't a courtroom. When we demand that every truth be laid bare and every mistake be accounted for, we aren't just seeking justice. We are often just creating wounds. And those wounds, once they're deep enough, don't care who was right. They only care that they hurt. Maybe the most difficult thing to learn is that some things don't need to be settled. Some things just need to be allowed to exist. Black is black, white is white, and time has a way of revealing the truth far better than our shouting ever could. There's a certain kind of peace that comes when you stop trying to be the judge. You just let the stubbornness fall away, like an old coat that doesn't fit anymore, and you start looking at the world with a bit more warmth, a bit more patience. It feels like stepping out of a shadow and into the sun. I've spent so much time, as I think many of us have, hoping that people would finally see me for who I really am, hoping they would understand my intentions, my reasons, my heart. But that's a heavy ambition to carry. To expect the whole world to understand you is a recipe for a very tired soul. We aren't built to fit into fixed molds, and neither is the day ahead of us. Things rarely go exactly as we planned, do they? But perhaps that isn't the point. Maybe the point is just to keep the heart relatively clear, to keep that inner pilot light of enthusiasm burning, even when the wind is picking up. When the world feels heavy or the day feels cluttered, I find myself looking for those small, private joys, the ones that don't depend on anyone else's approval. It's easy to get lost in the busyness, the endless list of things that need doing, but we have to be careful not to lose our own sense of youth, that part of us that still wonders, that part of us that still knows how to breathe. If you're tired, it's okay to just stop, not forever, just for a moment, just long enough to remember where you are and what you're doing. There's a quiet safety in that, knowing your destination but not being in such a hurry that you forget to feel the ground under your feet. As long as you know where your heart is anchored, you can't really get lost. I've been trying to practice a different kind of gratitude lately, not just for the good things, but for the things that challenge me. It's easy to be grateful for a friend who lifts you up, who holds the umbrella when it rains. That's natural, but it's a different thing altogether to feel a sense of appreciation for the people who oppose us, the ones who push against us. They are the ones who make us resilient. They are the ones who show us where our own edges are. It's like the ocean. It only becomes vast because it is willing to accept every river, the muddy ones and the clear ones alike. To be that open, it takes a lot of work. It takes a willingness to be soft when the world expects you to be hard. In this life, we are always doing one of two things. We are either moving forward or we are standing still. And I wonder, which one are we doing with intention? Are we moving because we're being chased by our worries? Or are we moving because we're drawn towards something beautiful? Even the act of stopping, of just being, is a choice. If we can carry a positive spirit with us, it becomes a kind of companion. It makes the walk a little lighter. It doesn't mean the road is easier. It just means we aren't fighting the road the whole way. Whether it's someone we've known forever or a stranger we pass on the street, there is a certain grace in just giving. Not necessarily money or things, but just a bit of ourselves, a bit of presence. We tend to treat relationships like a bank account, don't we? We think we can only withdraw if we've put something in, but sometimes we forget to make those deposits when things are going well. We wait until there's a crisis to suddenly start caring, to suddenly light the incense, as they say. But the real wealth is built in the quiet times, in the steady accumulation of small kindnesses over years. That's where the high interest is. That's what sustains us when the winter comes. I've noticed that when I'm angry, my first instinct is to reach a conclusion, to decide exactly what happened and who is to blame. But that's usually when I'm at my most blind. If I can just pause, just for a few breaths, and try to look from a different angle, the big problems start to look a little smaller. The unsolvable knots start to loosen. We have a habit of taking something simple and making it incredibly complicated with our what-ifs and our how dares. It takes a certain kind of maturity to do the opposite, to take the complex and settle it gently. There's this restlessness that comes from comparing our lives to others. It's a ghost that follows us around. We look at what someone else has, their success, their belongings, their apparent ease, and we feel a sudden lack in ourselves. But the world is so wide, there will always be someone who seems to have more, just as there will always be someone who has far less. I remember a thought that stuck with me once. We complain that we don't have beautiful shoes until we see someone who has no feet to put them on. It's a stark image, maybe a little uncomfortable, but it cuts through the noise. It reminds us that our perspective is a choice. If someone makes you angry, if they get under your skin and stay there, it's usually a sign that they still have power over you. You haven't quite moved past them yet. We spend so much energy looking back at the people who insulted us, replay the things they said, wondering why they were so cruel. But it's like being bitten by a stray dog. You don't bite the dog back to feel better. You just tend to the wound and keep walking. Their malice is about them. It isn't about you. If we can learn to just not care quite so much about the ill intent of others, we save so much of our own spirit for the things that actually matter. Even the work we do, the daily grind, the chores, the must-dos, we can choose to see them as a burden, or we can see them as a form of art, a way of being alive. If we approach the day with a sense of heaviness, then every hour is a weight. But if we can find a little bit of joy in the doing, even in the small things, the whole experience shifts. We only have a handful of decades here. It's such a short window of time. It seems a shame to spend it in a state of constant resentment or regret. The sun rises in the east and it sets in the west, and the day is going to pass regardless of whether we spent it being miserable or being at peace. Why not choose the peace? Why not let the unnecessary noise just drift away? It's easy to think that we need hope before we can persevere, that we need a guarantee before we try. But maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's through the act of persisting that hope is actually born. It isn't that we need an opportunity before we can grab it. It's that by refusing to let go, by staying in the game, the opportunities finally start to appear. We don't need to understand everything before we act. The understanding comes from the acting. We don't wait to be ready to take on responsibility. It's the weight of the responsibility itself that makes us grow up. It's the same with sharing. We think we have to be wealthy before we can be generous, but I've found that it's the people who know how to share who end up feeling the most abundant. It's not about the breakthrough leading to the challenge, but the challenge forcing the breakthrough. We don't wait for the reward to be grateful. The gratitude itself is the thing that brings the rewards into view. Everything in this world is moving, isn't it? It's all in a state of flux, a constant turning. If we try to grab onto it too tightly, if we refuse to let things go when their time is up, we just end up with a handful of shadows and a lot of unnecessary pain. The people who know how to cherish what they have, but also know when to open their hands, they are the ones who always seem to find something even more beautiful waiting just around the corner. Entering into the world each morning, maybe the goal is just to have a heart that is a little more still, to accept the gains and the losses with the same quiet breath. It sounds so simple, yet we make it so complex. We think happiness is a complicated puzzle we have to solve, but maybe it's just a way of living, a way of choosing to be light instead of heavy. There are so many ways to live a life. You can be busy and fast, or you can be slow and quiet. There's no single right way, but there is a way that feels like coming home. Every situation has two sides, after all. There is the difficulty and there is the growth. They're like twins, always walking together. Our life is a journey, and our soul is just trying to find its way toward a bit more maturity, a bit more space. Sometimes the moments that feel the most boring, the most empty, are actually the ones where we are the most at peace. We crave the excitement, the intensity, the things that make our hearts race, and those are fine, but there is a different kind of beauty in the stillness, a beauty that is real and lasting. Even the most fiery emotions eventually cool down. Even the most brilliant life needs moments of absolute silence. It doesn't matter what's happening on the outside, the true quiet is something you carry on the inside. It comes from having a heart that is wide enough to hold it all. When we stop obsessing over every little gain and every little loss, we finally start to understand what it actually means to be okay. I think the depth of our peace is directly tied to how much we can let go of the results. Happiness isn't always about what we've managed to collect. It's more often about the times we reached out to support someone else, the times we shared what we had. If we spend all our time calculating who owes us what, who is ahead of us, who is behind, we just get exhausted. But the person who can pick things up when they're needed and put them down when they're finished, there's a freedom in that, a calm that doesn't get ruffled by the storm, like a flower that keeps its scent even when the wind is howling. I was thinking about how easily we let ourselves become like a dry field in the height of summer, just waiting for a single match to be dropped. We tell ourselves we are in control, but then someone says something, a small comment, a slight, a bit of gossip, and we feel that heat rise instantly. If we are honest, it feels like we're handing the remote control of our lives to a stranger. They touch our pride, and we burst into flames. They criticize us, and our peace of mind just evaporates. It's an exhausting way to live, isn't it? Being that reactive, it's as if we're a candle in a windstorm, flickering and straining with every gust of someone else's opinion. Perhaps the real strength isn't in how we fight back, but in how we choose to stop being combustible. There's an old thought about three kinds of people: the one who is weak and seeks revenge, the one who is strong and finds the space to forgive, and then there's the third, the one who is wise enough to simply look away. Not out of coldness, but out of a kind of quiet self-preservation. It's like realizing that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You just keep walking, palms together in a silent wish for peace, both for them and for yourself. Because in the end, if we allow our internal world to be dictated by the words of others, we're never really free. We're just a reflection of their noise. We live in a world of mirrors, always looking at what the person next to us is holding. I've noticed how often we admire someone else's freedom while they are looking at us and envying our stability. We want their car, they want our home. We want their leisure. They want our sense of purpose. It's a strange, endless loop of wanting what isn't ours. Even the way we look at time when we're children. We can't wait to be grown, thinking that's where the power is. And then we get there, and we realize that the innocence of being small was actually the most priceless thing we ever owned. We spend our school years wishing for a job, and then we spend our working years dreaming of the days when our only worry was a textbook. It's as if we're always leaning into the future or looking back at the past, forgetting that this moment, right here, is the only one where we're actually alive. There's a deep kind of nourishment in remembering our roots. A tree can reach as high as it wants, but it only stands because of what's hidden beneath the soil. I find myself thinking of the people who were there when things were lean, the ones who lent a hand when we had nothing to offer in return, the ones who stayed by the bed when we were sick, the ones who taught us when we knew nothing. We carry those people with us. If we can keep that gratitude close, it changes our posture. It makes us the kind of person others can rely on. And there's a quiet power in that, in being someone who is respected not for what they have, but for the quality of their spirit. I wonder sometimes what sits at the very center of our lives. If we make money the center, everything becomes a struggle, a calculation. If we make our children the absolute center, we become weary with worry. If we make our pride the goal, we're always on edge, waiting for someone to challenge us. But if we can shift that center just a little bit, maybe towards something like tolerance, or the simple idea of enough, the whole world feels different. Happiness doesn't have to be a mountain we're climbing. It can be a choice we make in the middle of a busy afternoon. I've been reflecting on the idea of being too good, or maybe just too easy to use. It's a delicate balance, isn't it? We want to be kind, we want to be helpful, but sometimes we let ourselves become a tool for everyone else's convenience. We say yes to every request. We swallow every hurt. We let people cross our boundaries because we don't want to cause trouble. But kindness without boundaries isn't really kindness. It's just a lack of self-respect. People get used to receiving, and eventually, they forget to be grateful. They start to think your strength is just a lack of feeling. Being kind doesn't mean being a fool. Being moral doesn't mean being weak. We can have a heart that is open and compassionate, while still keeping a spine that is straight. It's okay to show the world that your kindness is a choice, not a habit of being taken advantage of. It's about maintaining that inner dignity, that sense of value for the qualities we're trying to cultivate. I think about how we often find ourselves being so incredibly polite to strangers, putting on our best faces for people we will never see again. Yet we come home and bring our sharpest words and our darkest moods to the people who love us the most. We treat the stranger with patience and the family with irritability. It's a common mistake, but it's a painful one. We forget that our home should be the place where we shield each other from the storm, not where we become the storm ourselves. No one is good to us without a reason, but family. They are the ones who take us as we are. They deserve the best of us, not just what's left over at the end of a hard day. If we can just be a little more intentional about where we put our energy, we don't need 1,000 friends. We just need a few who are real. Quality over quantity, like a single bright gem compared to a cart full of stones. We don't need to explain ourselves to everyone. The people who understand us don't need the explanation. And the people who don't, well, they probably won't hear us anyway. Life is so short and so unpredictable. It feels like we're just passing through, like guests in a house that doesn't belong to us. We spend so much time worrying about things that will be forgotten in a year, or even a week. Maybe the goal is just to return to today, to give today our best effort, our sincere hope, and then let it go. Whatever happened yesterday is already a memory. Whatever happens tomorrow is just a possibility. But right now, we can choose to be at peace. We can choose to be the kind of person who doesn't need to win every fight, who doesn't need to own every beautiful thing they see. Just a heart that is simple and clear and maybe a little bit more patient than it was this morning. It's like that story of the flower in the deep woods. No one is there to see it. No one is there to tell it how beautiful it is or how sweet it smells. But it doesn't care. It doesn't wither because it lacks an audience. It just blooms. It gives its fragrance to the wind because that is its nature. It doesn't need a thank you to be what it is. Perhaps we can be a bit like that, just blooming because it's time to bloom, and letting the rest of it, the praise, the criticism, the noise, just blow past us like the breeze through the trees. I've been thinking a lot about the weight of a promise. In a world that moves so fast, where everything feels disposable, there's something almost sacred about being a person of your word. It's not about being perfect, and it's certainly not about being rich or successful in the way the world usually measures those things. It's more about the quiet integrity of how we show up when things are difficult. Even if we're struggling, even if we're at our absolute lowest point, there is a dignity in simply being honest. If you owe someone something, not just money, but a moment of your time or an explanation, the hardest thing is often to just be clear. We tend to go silent when we're overwhelmed. We ignore the call, we avoid the appointment, we hope the problem will just dissolve if we don't look at it. But silence can be its own kind of weight. There's a certain power in saying, "I'm struggling right now, but I haven't forgotten." It's that transparency that keeps the world from feeling like a place of constant suspicion. Being trusted by someone, that's a rare kind of currency. It means that in their eyes, you have a specific kind of value that money can't buy. You can lose everything, you can be back at zero, but if you still have your name and your word, you can build it all back. The moment we stop being able to look someone in the eye because we've hidden too much of ourselves, that's when the path truly starts to feel narrow and dangerous. It's interesting to notice the roles we play and how easy it is to let them get out of balance. We all wear so many hats: parent, partner, professional, friend, and each of those roles has its own quiet gravity. There are these invisible lines we shouldn't cross, not because there's a law against it, but because it breaks the harmony of the thing. I think about how a parent can sometimes stifle a child by never letting them feel the weight of their own feet on the ground, or how a couple can slowly drift apart simply because they stopped respecting the small, daily boundaries of the other person boxes. We see it in the world around us every day: the teacher who forgets they were once a student, the person in power who starts to believe their own myths, the friend who lets a seed of jealousy turn into a wall of suspicion. It's as if we're all walking a tightrope, and the only way to stay on is to keep checking in with our own heart. Are we being honest in our work? Are we being fair in our judgments? Are we taking more than we give? There's this habit we have of always looking at the hill on the other side of the valley. We stand in our own lives, surrounded by our own small blessings, but our eyes are fixed on the horizon. We see the success of someone else, their house, their travels, the way their family seems to smile in pictures, and we feel a sudden, sharp pang of regret for our own life. We forget that every hill has its shadows. The person we envy might be craving the very stability we find boring. They might be carrying a loneliness that we can't see from this distance. It's a trick of the light, really, this idea that someone else has it all figured out while we're just muddling through. On this earth, everything has two sides. You want the success? You have to accept the sacrifice that comes with it. You want the independence? You have to be okay with the solitude. It's like the rain. We love how it cools the air and makes the garden green, but we can't have the rain without the mud. If we want a life that is vibrant and full of growth, we have to be willing to get our hands a little dirty. We have to accept the imperfections as part of the deal. I've realized that my time and my energy aren't infinite. None of ours are. We only have so many heartbeats in a day, and we spend so much of that precious energy comparing ourselves to people who are on a completely different journey. Why do we do that? Why do we let the noise of the world tell us what we should want? Perhaps the most radical thing we can do is just focus. To look at the choice we've made and commit to it with everything we have. To stop wondering what if and start asking what now. If we've chosen a path, there's a certain peace in walking it fully, without constantly looking over our shoulder to see who is catching up. It feels like we're always waiting for things to be perfect before we allow ourselves to be happy. We think, once I get that promotion, or once the kids are older, or once the house is paid off, then I'll breathe. But the sun doesn't wait for us to be happy before it rises. The moon doesn't wait for us to stop grieving before it pulls the tides. The world is moving, and it's beautiful in all its messiness right now. You can close your eyes and pretend the darkness is everywhere, but that doesn't mean the light has stopped existing. It just means you aren't looking at it. There's a saying that there's no wood too hard for a sharp enough axe, and no problem too complex for a mind that is willing to look for a way through. If we want something to change, we usually have to start by changing the way we're looking at it. If we can't change the situation, we can at least change the internal weather we bring to it. I think about the way a cup of water can be either too hot or too cold, but when it's just the right temperature, it's exactly what you need. Life is a bit like that. We spend so much time at the extremes, either burning with ambition or shivering with fear, that we forget how to find that middle ground where things are just right. Where the music is at a volume we can actually enjoy, and the pace is one we can sustain. It's not about being the fastest or the best. It's about being appropriate for the moment. Sometimes being happy is just a matter of being a good fit for your own life. It's easy to get caught up in the calculations, to think that if we are clever enough, we can outmaneuver every difficulty. But life isn't something you can win through sheer cleverness. You can outsmart a rival, sure, but you can't outsmart the basic nature of things. You can't outsmart the fact that we all need connection, and we all need a bit of grace. I've seen people spend their whole lives trying to get the upper hand, only to find that they've pushed away everyone who actually cared about them. They won the game, but they ended up playing alone. It seems much better to be the person who is perhaps a little less in the eyes of the world, but who has a heart full of people. We often think that being honest and kind is a risk, that people will see it as weakness, and maybe some will. But those aren't the people you're building a life with, anyway. The people who are real, the ones who stay, they are drawn to that sincerity. It's like a light in a very dark forest. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to stay lit. And there's a quiet strength in that, in being someone who doesn't need to use tricks or maneuvers to be valued. Just being a person who is steady. A person who, when they say they will be there, they are there. There are moments when everything feels like a knot that just won't come undone. We try to pull at the strings, and the knot only gets tighter. In those moments, maybe the best thing is to just stop pulling, to sit with the knot, to look at it without judgment. We have this idea that we have to solve everything immediately, but time has a way of loosening things that we can't. If we can just hold on to a little bit of patience, a little bit of tolerance for the unknown, the answer often just floats to the surface on its own. It's like mud in a glass of water. If you keep stirring it, it stays cloudy. But if you just set the glass down and wait, eventually the sediment settles and the water becomes clear again. We just have to be willing to wait for the settling. I've been learning to be more careful with the way I speak, too. A single word can start a fire that takes years to put out, while another can be the thing that finally allows someone else to breathe. We have so much power in our voices, and we often use it so carelessly. We critique, we judge, we gossip, and we think it's harmless because it's just talk. But every word we send out into the world leaves a trace. It changes the atmosphere. If we could see the impact of our words like we see the ripples in a pond, I think we would be a lot more silent. Not a silence of having nothing to say, but a silence of choosing only the words that actually add something of value. Sometimes, the most helpful thing you can say is nothing at all. Just being there, just witnessing, is enough. There's a certain beauty in being a work in progress. We're so hard on ourselves for not being further along, for still having the same old flaws, the same old fears. But maybe the flaws aren't the problem. Maybe they're just the texture of being human. If we were all perfectly smooth and polished, we wouldn't have anything to hold on to. Our struggles are what give us depth. They are what make us capable of understanding someone else's pain. When you've been through the fire, you know how to talk to someone else who is still in the middle of it. You don't give them a lecture. You just sit with them in the heat. I often think about how many versions of ourselves exist in the minds of other people. To some, we are a hero. To others, a disappointment. To some, we are a stranger. To others, the entire world. We can't control those versions. We can only control the original, the person we are when no one is watching. If that person is someone we can live with, someone we can respect, then the rest of it doesn't matter quite so much. The opinions of others are like the weather. They change without warning, and they don't really have anything to do with our own worth. We can't spend our lives trying to keep everyone's sky clear. We just have to make sure we're walking our own path with a bit of integrity, a bit of kindness, and a lot of heart. And maybe that's enough for today. I've been sitting with this idea of how we respond when the world feels a little less than kind. It's so easy to get caught up in the friction of it all. I heard it said once that a weak heart looks for a way to get even. A strong heart finds a way to forgive, but a truly wise heart, it just learns how to look past it altogether. There's something so liberating in that third option, isn't there? It isn't about being cold or indifferent. It's more like realizing that your energy is a finite, precious resource, and you simply refuse to spend it on a resentment that doesn't serve anyone. You just let it go. You turn your gaze towards something that actually grows. I find myself wishing that more of us could find that space where we can just put our hands together in a quiet, internal gesture of goodwill, hoping that we can all just learn to be a little more gentle with one another. Because, really, there's enough pain in the world without us adding our own small grievances to the pile. It's a strange thing, how we all look at each other's lives. I've noticed it in myself, and I see it in the people I love. We look at someone else's situation, and we see only the highlights, the parts that seem so much better than our own. I might be looking at your life, admiring your freedom, the way you can just pick up and go whenever the mood strikes you, while you might be looking at me, wishing for the roots I've planted, the commitments that keep me anchored. We admire the person with the fancy car, while they're staring at the person with the cozy, quiet home. We envy someone's high-powered career, while they're dreaming of the luxury of just having a Tuesday afternoon with absolutely nothing to do. We're all just mirrors for each other's unfulfilled desires. When we were kids, we couldn't wait to be adults, thinking that's when the real life would begin. And now, here we are. And what do? We look back at those years when our biggest worry was a math test or a scraped knee, and we realize that innocence was actually the most expensive thing we ever owned. We didn't know then that we were living in the good old days. It's the same with school and work. We spend so much time wishing for the next phase, only to realize later that the phase we were in was actually quite beautiful in its own way. If you're single, you might crave the companionship of a partner, and if you've been married for decades, You might occasionally pine for the silence of being alone. It's as if the human heart is designed to always be a little bit restless, always looking for the one piece of the puzzle that's currently missing. But maybe the trick is to stop trying to complete the puzzle. Maybe it's okay that it's a little bit unfinished. I've been trying to cultivate a deeper kind of gratitude lately. The kind that goes beyond just saying, thank you for the easy things. I find myself thinking about the people who were there when the tank was empty. You know those people. The ones who lent you a bit of money when you were truly struggling. Not because they had plenty, but because they knew what it felt like to have nothing. The people who stood by you and helped you carry the weight of a difficult season when you didn't have the strength to stand on your own. I think of the people who stayed up with us when we were sick, the ones who made the soup and brought the tea, or the ones who loved us even when we were at our most unlovable, when we were empty-handed emotionally and had nothing to give back. And the teachers, the mentors, the ones who had the patience to explain things to us over and over again when we just couldn't see the way forward. When we hold on to those memories, when we really let that gratitude sink into our bones, it changes the way we walk through the world. It makes us more likely to be that person for someone else. There's a certain kind of wealth that comes from that, the kind that isn't sitting in a bank account but is reflected in the quality of our relationships and the softness of our character. I've been reflecting on what we choose to make the center of our universe. It's an interesting exercise to look at where your thoughts go when they have nowhere else to be. If we make money and wealth the center of everything, we're going to spend our lives feeling tired and precarious, always chasing a number that's just out of reach. If we make our children the absolute center, we might find ourselves exhausted by the weight of their every success and failure, forgetting that they have their own paths to walk. If we make romantic love the only thing that matters, we're setting ourselves up for a lot of inevitable heartache, because no one person can be our everything. And if we make winning, being right, being better, being first our main goal, then we're never going to be at peace. There's always going to be someone faster, someone smarter, someone more successful. But what if we made something like tolerance the center? Or maybe just the simple act of being satisfied with what is? If we can find a way to be happy with enough, then we're already richer than most of the people we envy. If we can turn gratitude into our primary motivation, we start to become something different. We become kinder, more grounded. We start to see the world not as a series of things to be acquired, but as a series of moments to be appreciated. It's a delicate thing, though, being a good person. Sometimes I think we confuse being good with being easy to push around. I've noticed that some people see kindness as a kind of invitation. They think because you're willing to help, they can ask for anything. And because you're willing to forgive, they can keep making the same mistakes. It's easy to feel a bit cynical when that happens, isn't it? To feel like your goodness is being treated as a weakness. But I don't think that's true. I think there's a massive difference between being a good person and being a fool. We live in a world where some people are just used to receiving. They forget how to say thank you because they start to see your generosity as an obligation. They see your strength and they assume you don't need any care yourself. They see your big heart and they assume it's an infinite resource that they can just keep tapping into. It's okay to be kind, but it's also important to be wise about where that kindness goes. You can't keep pouring from an empty cup. And you certainly shouldn't be pouring it into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. I'm learning that being moral and being gentle doesn't mean you don't have a backbone. It's actually more meaningful to be kind when people know you have the strength to be otherwise. It's about being upright, having a sense of self-respect that says, I will help you because I want to, not because I have to, and I will respect myself enough to know when to stop. It's a balance. We try to be open and compassionate, but we also have to hold on to our own value. If we spend all our time worrying about everyone else's feelings and ignoring our own, we eventually just burn out. And a burnt-out heart can't do much good for anyone. There's a freedom that comes from having a heart that is as you go, a spirit that is open to whatever the day brings. If you can keep a peaceful heart, you can have a peaceful life, regardless of the chaos outside. It's like carrying your own atmosphere with you. If you have a heart of compassion, you'll find yourself doing good things almost without thinking about it. If you keep a heart of gratitude, you'll find that you're suddenly aware of how much you actually have. And if you can remember the simple law of cause and effect, that what we put out into the world usually finds its way back to us, then our decisions start to feel a lot more clear. We start to see when it's time to yield, when it's time to move, and when it's time to just sit still. I think about how much simpler life would be if we could just keep our hearts basic. Not basic as in shallow, but basic as in uncomplicated. When something happens, it happens. We don't have to wrap it in 1,000 layers of story and resentment. We can just face it, see it for what it is, and then move on to the next thing. It takes practice, of course. We have these old habits of reflecting and ruminating, of checking the mirror to see how we look to everyone else. But every once in a while, we get a glimpse of what it would be like to just be clear, like a window that's finally been washed. You don't look at the window, you look through it at the world. And the world, when you look at it without all that baggage, is actually a pretty remarkable place. It's often the things we find the most forbidden, or the things we're told to avoid, that tell us the most about ourselves. I've noticed that the biggest mistakes we make usually come from a place of arrogance or a lack of respect, whether it's a child not respecting their parents, or partners losing sight of each other's value, or even just the way we treat the people we work with. There's a natural order to things, a kind of harmony that we disrupt whenever we let our egos get too big for the room. I think of the teacher who stops caring about the student, or the doctor who starts seeing patients as just another chart on the wall. When we lose that human connection, when we stop seeing the person in front of us as a whole, complicated, suffering human being just like us, that's when we start to lose our way. We get caught up in our roles and our titles, and we forget that at the end of the day, we're all just trying to get through the afternoon without too much trouble. I was thinking about the people whose jobs are so vital, yet we rarely give them a second thought until something goes wrong. The drivers on the road, the people in the hospitals, the people making sure our world keeps turning. There's a certain kind of ego that comes with being successful, that makes us think we're more important than the person who is just trying to do their job well. But a competitive spirit on the road, or a dismissive attitude in a shop, it doesn't just hurt the other person, it leaves a little mark on us, too. It makes our own world a little bit smaller and a little more hostile. It feels like we're always looking for the next big thing, the next peak to climb, and we forget that the most important work is often the quietest. It's the way we handle the small frustrations. It's the way we choose to speak when we're tired. It's the way we hold on to our integrity when no one is looking. We're so often distracted by what's happening over there, on the other side of the hill, that we trip over the beauty that's right under our feet. We see what others have, and we feel that little pinch of self-pity, forgetting that everyone is carrying their own set of losses. Success requires sacrifice. Independence requires a certain amount of being alone. It's all a trade-off. Even a beautiful rainstorm, as much as we need it, brings a bit of mud. We can't have one without the other. So maybe the goal isn't to find a life that's perfect, but to find a way to be okay with the imperfection of it all. To be wise about how we use our limited time and our limited energy. To stop comparing our inside with everyone else's outside. If we could just focus on doing what we think is right and being as present as we can in the life we've actually chosen. And it's true, isn't it, that our time and our strength, They aren't these endless reservoirs we like to pretend they are. We treat our energy like a currency we can just keep printing, but eventually, the bank runs dry. I've been realizing lately that the smartest thing I can do, maybe the only thing that really matters, is to be very quiet and very selective about where I point my focus. Once you've made a choice, once you've picked a direction, there is such a profound relief in just being there, fully. Without that constant, nagging habit of looking over your shoulder to see if someone else is taking a faster route, or wondering if the grass on the other side of the fence is a slightly more vibrant shade of green. If we could just stop comparing our pace to everyone else's, we might actually notice the scenery on our own path. There's a quiet power in saying, "This is where I am, and this is where I'm putting my heart," and then just letting the rest of the world's noise fade into the background. I find myself thinking about the sun a lot lately. It's so steady, so indifferent to our small human dramas. It doesn't wait for us to feel ready or happy before it crests the horizon. It doesn't check our mood to see if it should bother rising today. Even if we're having a terrible morning, even if we're nursing a grievance or feeling lost, the sun just does its work. And the moon is the same. It doesn't stay full just because we're feeling lonely at the end of the night. There's something comforting in that indifference. It reminds me that my feelings, as big as they feel to me, aren't the center of the universe. We can close our eyes and tell ourselves the world is dark, but that doesn't mean the light has gone anywhere. It just means we've chosen not to look. We can blur our own vision, but the clarity of the world remains. It's like that old saying, there isn't a tree in the forest that can't be cut down if the axe is sharp enough. It's rarely the task itself that's impossible. It's usually just that we haven't found the right approach yet. Or maybe we're looking for excuses instead of methods. If we really want to find a way, we usually do. And if we don't, well, we're very good at finding reasons why we couldn't. Life is often compared to a cup of water. It doesn't actually matter if the water is hot or cold, as long as the temperature is right for you. If it's what you need in that moment, it's perfect. It's the same with our lives. We don't need the best life, whatever that means. We just need one that fits. A flavor that suits us, a rhythm that feels like our own heartbeat. Whether the music is fast or slow, if it's in a key you can sing along to, then it's a good song. We spend so much time trying to live a life that looks good to other people, trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for us. And then we wonder why we're so tired. But when you find that just right temperature, everything else just starts to feel manageable. I've been trying to be more honest with myself about the calculations I make. We're always counting, aren't we? Who is ahead of us? Who has more? Who is more talented? But the world is a very big place. No matter how high you climb, there's always going to be another mountain. No matter how good you think you are at something, there's always going to be someone who makes it look effortless. If we spend our lives trying to be the top of every hill, we're going to spend a lot of time feeling inferior. Maybe the real wisdom is in realizing that you can't calculate your way to a happy life. You can outsmart a rival for a day, but you can't outsmart the truth. You can't outsmart the need for sincerity. I've seen people who are so clever, so good at playing the game, but they're also the most anxious people I know. They're constantly looking over their shoulders, wondering when someone is going to catch on to the act. It seems so much easier to just be straightforward, to be the kind of person who doesn't need to keep track of their stories, to have a reputation for being honest, even if it means you aren't always winning. Because in the end, when the chips are down, the people who stayed with you weren't the ones who were impressed by your maneuvers. They were the ones who trusted your heart. And I think we have to be especially careful with the people who are truly honest, the ones who don't know how to play those games. There's a certain cruelty in taking advantage of someone's kindness or their simplicity. In a world that often rewards the loudest and the most cunning, the quiet, straightforward person can seem like an easy target. But there's no victory in bullying someone who doesn't want to fight back. It doesn't make you strong, it just makes you smaller. I've noticed that people who are truly real don't bother with thuduan. They don't use tactics. They just do their work. They care for their families, and they speak the truth. If we can't help people like that, the least we can do is not stand in their way. It's so easy to judge, isn't it? We have these internal rulers that we use to measure everyone we meet. We see someone living a life that's different from ours, and we immediately start categorizing them better, worse, right, wrong. But we don't know their hard places. We don't know the mistakes they've had to work through or the burdens they're carrying that they never talk about. Everyone has a reason for being the way they are. If we could just stop using our own standards as the only measure of a life well lived, the world might feel like a much larger, more compassionate place. I'm learning that being good is a very quiet thing. It isn't about the grand gestures or the things people see on the outside. It's about the sincerity we keep when no one is watching. It's about how we treat the people we don't need anything from. If we can keep that heart of kindness, even when it feels like we're not getting anything in return, something happens to us. We start to feel sturdy, like we're built on something more solid than just the opinions of the crowd. There's a certain beauty in going through the tangles of life and coming out the other side without being hardened. Life isn't a battlefield, though we often treat it like one. We think we have to win every argument and prove every point. But if we can just increase our understanding, the misunderstandings naturally start to shrink. If we can learn to yield just a little bit more, the friction starts to disappear. There are some things you just have to endure, and some people you just have to give space to. You don't have to be right all the time. You don't need everyone's approval to be okay. We take ourselves so seriously, don't we? We think our ego is this precious thing that we have to protect at all costs. We worry so much about what we might lose, about who might not understand us. But maybe the secret is to just shrink the ego, to make ourselves a little bit smaller and the world a little bit bigger. When you stop obsessing over your own image, you suddenly have so much more energy to actually enjoy your life. You start to notice the people around you. You start to see their struggles and their beauty. You start to put yourself in their shoes, and suddenly, the world doesn't feel like a place of competition anymore. It feels like a place of connection. The more we open our hearts, the more room there is for joy. It sounds like a cliché, I know, but there's a real, physical truth to it. A closed heart is a very tight, uncomfortable place to live. But a heart that can tolerate a few rumors, that can let a few insults slide past without catching fire, that's a heart that can actually breathe. We can't control what people say behind our backs. We can't control the rumors or the gossip. And why would we want to? If someone is focused on your life, it's usually because they don't have enough going on in their own. The more excellent you try to be, the more people are going to have something to say about it. That's just the tax you pay for growing. I'm beginning to think that the most important thing we can do is just keep a light heart. To walk through the chaos and the noise and the misunderstandings and just keep going. To admit when we're wrong, which is its own kind of honesty, and to move on when someone else is wrong, which is its own kind of grace. We can't control the world, but we can control the way we walk through it. And maybe that's the real work. Just keeping that inner world clear, regardless of what the weather is doing outside. It's like those times when everything feels blocked, when you can't see a way forward and every door seems to be shut. We have this tendency to panic, to think that this is the end of the road. But maybe it's just a bend. Maybe it's just a place where we need to slow down and wait for the fog to lift. Everything we have right now, this body, this house, this career, it's all just temporary, isn't it? We're just holding on to it for a little while. If things are going well, we should enjoy them, knowing they won't last forever. And if things are difficult, we should remember that they won't last forever either. I've been thinking about how often we look for help from the outside, hoping someone will come along and solve our problems for us. And it's wonderful when someone does help. We should always be grateful for that. But we can't let our entire sense of security rest on someone else. We have to have that core of strength inside ourselves. It's like the difference between a spare tire and the steering wheel. Morality, integrity. Those shouldn't be things we just pull out when there's an emergency. They should be the things that are guiding the car the whole time. I find myself thinking about my old friends and the new people I meet. The old friends are like gold. They've been through the seasons with us. The new ones are like diamonds, bright and full of potential. But you need the gold to hold the diamond in place, don't you? You can't have one without the other. Friendship is such a fragile thing. It takes years to build that kind of trust, but it only takes a moment of carelessness to burn it down. It's like a book that takes a lifetime to write, but can be lost in an afternoon. We worry so much about what might happen tomorrow, as if our worry could somehow prevent the difficulties from coming. But all worry does is strip the peace out of today. It doesn't solve the future. It just poisons the present. If we could just live more simply, if we could speak with a little more kindness and love, with a little more sincerity, maybe the rest of it would just take care of itself. We're so focused on the rearview mirror, obsessed with what happened 10 years ago or 5 minutes ago, that we forget that the windshield is so much bigger for a reason. The past is where we get our experience, sure, it's how we learn, but we're not living back there, we're living here. And maybe, in the quiet moments, we can send out a little bit of good energy to the people around us. When we feel at peace, when we feel a moment of genuine happiness, perhaps we can just hold that feeling and hope that someone else, somewhere, is feeling it too. Because you never know. Maybe the peace you're feeling right now is because someone else, somewhere, was thinking of you. I've been thinking about how much we miss because we've forgotten how to look at the world with the eyes of a child. When we're young, we don't look for the purpose of a ladybug or the value of a dandelion. We just see them. There is a certain kind of honesty in that gaze, a way of witnessing the world without immediately trying to categorize it or use it. As we get older, we layer so much noise over our vision. We see a sunset and think about how it would look on social media, or we see a person and immediately start weighing their status against our own. But every once in a while, if we're lucky, that clutter falls away. We find ourselves looking at a quiet street or a sleeping face, and for a split second, we see the world as it truly is. We hear a kind of music in the silence. It feels like there is a light inside us, something steady and soft, like the moon on a clear night. We call it kindness or goodness, but those words feel a bit too small for what it actually is. It's more like a temperature. It's the warmth that can soften even the coldest, most rigid parts of a life. I've noticed that when we carry that light, the people around us seem to change, too. Not because we've fixed them, but because they're standing in a different light. Even a heart that has been frozen over by years of disappointment or cynicism can start to thaw if it's around enough warmth. I see kindness as a kind of seed we're all born with. For some of us, that seed was watered early on, and it's grown into a deep-rooted tree that provides shade for everyone we meet. For others, the ground was a bit harder, the weather a bit harsher, and the seed has stayed dormant. It might even feel like we've lost it altogether, but it's still there. You can't truly destroy that part of yourself. You can only bury it. And it's never too late to start tending to it. It's not a bank account where you're looking for a return on your investment. Real goodness doesn't care about the thank you or the reward. It's just the act of being human in the most honest way possible. I heard a story once about a student and an old teacher. They were standing at the edge of a vast green field, and the teacher asked the student to do something very simple. Walk across this field and pick the most perfect blade of grass you can find. But there's a condition: you can only move forward. You can never step back. The student started walking, his eyes fixed on the ground. Almost immediately, he saw a beautiful, vibrant blade of grass, glistening with dew. He reached down to pick it, but then he hesitated. He looked further ahead and thought, well, if this one is this beautiful, surely there's an even better one just a few steps away. So he kept walking. He saw another one, even greener, but again he thought, the perfect one must be further along. He kept passing up beautiful, healthy blades of grass, always convinced that the perfect one was just over the next little rise. Before he knew it, he reached the far edge of the field. The grass there was thin and dry, struggling in the shade of the trees. He looked back at the lush field he'd just crossed, the one he could never return to, and he realized he had walked past 1,000 perfect blades of grass while he was busy looking for a ghost of perfection that didn't exist. He ended up picking a wilted, yellowed piece of straw just so he wouldn't come back empty-handed. We do that so often, don't we? We're so busy looking for the perfect opportunity, the perfect partner, the perfect moment to finally start living, that we walk right past the life that's actually happening. We're so obsessed with the best that we lose the good. We forget that being satisfied with what is right in front of us isn't a sign of settling, it's a sign of wisdom. If the student had just looked at the grass beneath his feet with a bit more appreciation, he would have realized he was already standing in a field of perfection the whole time. It's the same with the people in our lives. I've noticed that if you look at someone and see only their flaws, their sharp edges, their mistakes, their annoying habits, they start to look like a demon to you. And when you treat someone like a demon, they usually find a way to live up to that expectation. But if you can shift your gaze, if you can look for the part of them that is struggling, the part that is trying, the part that is holy, in a sense, they start to look different. It's like looking in a mirror. If you frown at the mirror, you're never going to get a smile back. If we want to be treated with respect and tenderness, we usually have to lead the way. We treat our friends with sincerity, our families with loyalty, and even the people who push against us with a bit of forgiveness. It's not about them, it's about the kind of atmosphere we want to live in. If we're holding on to a heart full of good things, the quality of our life naturally goes up. Our face starts to reflect what's happening on the inside. They say that after a certain age, we're responsible for our own faces, the lines of laughter, or the lines of bitterness. It's all just the external version of our internal weather. I think a lot about credit lately, not the kind you have with a bank, but the kind of trust you build with the world. It's the most valuable thing any of us owns. You can be struggling, you can be absolutely broke, but if people know that your word is solid, you're still a wealthy person. I've seen people lose everything because they thought they could outsmart their obligations. They borrow and they disappear, or they make promises they have no intention of keeping, thinking they're being clever, but they're actually just burning down the only house they have to live in. Once you lose your reputation for being a person of integrity, the world becomes a very cold, narrow place. It doesn't matter how much money you have if no one can look you in the eye. But if you're honest, even when it's embarrassing, even when it's hard, people will move mountains for you. Because in a world that's full of noise and empty promises, a person who is real is a rare and precious thing. We spend so much time looking at our reflection, worried about whether we're perfect or whether we're enough. We see our own limitations, our own smallness, and we think we're the only ones who feel this way. But if we could just look a little deeper, we'd realize that everyone is carrying the same weight. We're all just trying to stay upright. We're all just looking for a bit of warmth. I'm starting to realize that the most important work isn't the stuff we do for a paycheck or for status. It's the work of staying human. It's the way we handle a misunderstanding. It's the way we choose to speak to the person who is checking us out at the grocery store. It's the way we treat the parts of ourselves that we're the most ashamed of. If we can bring a little more sincerity to those moments, a little more straightforwardness, then the path ahead of us starts to clear. We don't have to be saints. We don't have to have all the answers. We just have to be honest. And maybe that's the real secret, that being good is actually much easier than the alternative. It takes so much energy to maintain a lie, or to keep track of a grudge, or to constantly try to be better than everyone else. But to just be here, to just look at the grass and see that it's green, and to look at the person in front of you and see that they're human. There's a profound kind of rest in that. You don't have to strive for it. You just have to stop running long enough for it to catch up to you. I often think about how many words we use in a day. We talk and we talk, often just to fill the space, or to defend ourselves, or to prove we're right. But sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is just be silent, to let the other person's words land without immediately throwing something back, to be a witness instead of a judge. It takes a lot of strength to be that quiet. It's the strength of a mountain. It doesn't have to move to be powerful. It just stands there, and it lets the clouds pass by. It's funny how a single sentence can linger in the air long after the person who said it has left the room. I've been thinking about the weight of our words lately, how a sharp, careless comment can spark a fire that burns for years, while a gentle, well-timed word can be the thing that finally allows someone to put their burdens down. It's almost frightening, the power we carry in our voices. We can spend 1,000 sentences trying to build someone up, trying to offer guidance or comfort, and yet it only takes one cold, cutting remark to tear it all down. Why are we so quick to use the sharp edge and so slow to use the soft one? We tend to think that being brutally honest is a virtue, but maybe we're just being brutal. If we could just learn to pause, to let the thought settle before it reaches our lips, we might realize that most of what we say doesn't actually need to be said. And the things that do need to be said, they deserve a bit more care. They deserve a voice that is grounded in a bit of warmth. We all have these strengths and these deep, hidden weaknesses. It's the human condition. But I've noticed that when we look at others, our eyes seem to gravity pull toward the flaws. We see someone's mistake, we see where they fall short, and we use it as a way to feel a little more secure in ourselves. But what a waste of energy that is. If we could just shift that gaze, if we could stop being the critics of everyone else's lives, we might realize that every person we meet has something to teach us. Even the person who is struggling the most, even the person we disagree with the most, they are a mirror. If we can learn to appreciate their strengths instead of obsessing over their failures, we actually start to complete ourselves. We spend so much time being jealous of someone else's success, wondering why they have it so easy while we're still grinding away. But what if we used that same energy to just work? To move quietly toward our own goals without needing to compare our progress to anyone else's. I look back sometimes at the things that used to keep me up at night, the heartaches that felt like they would never end, the failures that felt so final. And now, from this distance, they feel as light as a breeze passing through the trees. They were so heavy then, so all-consuming. But time has a way of thinning those tragedies out. It makes me wonder about the things I'm worrying about right now. In 10 years, in 20 years, will they feel this heavy? Probably not. They'll just be another part of the story. If we can hold on to that perspective, if we can stay a little more sober in the face of our own drama, then nothing in this world is truly unbearable. We just have to be patient enough to let the wind blow past. I've been learning that when life starts to feel like a cage, when the walls feel a bit too close and the air feels a bit too thin, sometimes the answer isn't to try and break the walls. Sometimes you just have to change the way you're looking at the room. If you're exhausted, maybe it's not that you're doing too much. Maybe you're just in the wrong environment. You might need to change the scenery to find a place where you can actually breathe. If you're full of doubt, maybe you just need to stand in a different spot for a while and look at the problem from a new angle. If you're grieving or angry, perhaps the solution isn't to fight the feeling, but to change the way you think about it. We're so often paralyzed by our own either-or choices, but there's usually a third way, a fourth way, a way that opens up only when we're willing to let go of our first, most stubborn thought. There's a sacredness in trust that I think we often overlook. When someone chooses to trust you when they tell you their secrets, or they show you their weaknesses, or they lend you the money they've worked so hard for, they aren't just giving you a thing. They are giving you their faith. And that's a fragile gift. I've seen people treat that faith so casually, as if it's something they're entitled to. They take the loan and then disappear. Or they hear a secret and then turn it into gossip for a bit of social currency. But every time we do that, we're actually hurting ourselves far more than we're hurting the other person. We're hollowing out our own integrity. We're making our own world a little bit more lonely. Because trust is a circle. If you want to be someone who is trusted, you have to be someone who is trustworthy, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. If you're sincere, if you're serious about your commitments, then people will naturally want to be near you. They'll feel safe with you. And there is no greater wealth in this life than being a person that others can lean on without fear. I think we also have to learn how to stand in someone else's shoes for more than just a passing second. It's easy to say we're empathetic, but it's a lot harder to actually feel the weight of someone else's struggle. We judge people for being stressed over things that seem simple to us, but we don't see the thousands of other small things that led up to that moment. We don't see their hard places. We aren't them. We don't have their history or their specific fears. If we could just acknowledge that, if we could just admit that we don't know the whole story, we might be a lot less likely to judge. The best kind of relationship, whether it's a friendship or a marriage, is one where you don't even have to say the words. It's when you understand the other person's enthusiasm, and even when it's difficult, you want to help them reach their goal. It's when you know what they're trying to say, but you're willing to sit in the silence with them while they find the words. We aren't perfect. None of us are. We all have our days where we're difficult to be around, where our work is sloppy, or where we let our emotions get the better of us. But if we can learn to shift our position, to look at each other with a bit more grace, the friction just starts to melt away. I've been trying to practice this, remembering someone's kindness while letting their mistakes go. It's a hard habit to break. The way we tend to fixate on the one time someone let us down, completely forgetting the 100 times they showed up. We hold onto that one grievance like a shield, as if it protects us, but it really just keeps us isolated. To remember the good, to be tolerant of the flaws, that's how you build something that actually lasts. And it's true for the world too. We're so obsessed with who is winning and who is losing, with our own small share of the pie. But being selfish, being narrow-minded, it just makes for a very tired, very small life. The people who are truly great, the ones who leave a light behind them, are the ones who knew how to be generous. They knew how to give without constantly checking the ledger to see what they were going to get back. They knew that when you help someone else, you're really just helping the whole world feel a bit more hospitable. There's a lot of talk about virtue and character, but I think it shows up most clearly in our silence. It shows up in the way we refuse to gossip, even when everyone else is doing it. It shows up in the way we handle being right without needing to make the other person feel small. It's a quiet kind of dignity. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need to be shouted from the rooftops. It's just there, like the roots of a tree, holding everything steady while the wind tries to blow it all down. Maybe the most important thing we can do is just keep that inner space clear, to notice when we're starting to feel bitter or petty, and to just let it go, to admit when we're wrong, and to be gracious when someone else is. It's not about being a saint, it's just about being a little more human, a little more aware of how much we all need a bit of grace. We're all just walking each other home, after all. There's no point in trying to outrun one another. It's funny how we treat our own hearts like a storage unit, isn't it? We keep everything. We hold on to that one sharp comment from a co-worker 5 years ago, or that slight from a relative at a holiday dinner, as if those memories are precious heirlooms. But when we crowd the heart with all that bitterness, we don't leave any room for the things that actually matter. I've been realizing lately that when I spend my energy obsessing over someone else's flaws, I'm basically taking their mistake and using it to punish myself. I'm the one who loses sleep. I'm the one whose jaw is tight. And I'm the one who can't enjoy the morning because I'm too busy being right about someone else's wrong. It's a heavy way to live. I heard it said once that if you look for the bad in everyone, you're eventually going to find it not because everyone is bad, but because that's the lens you've chosen to wear. It's like looking into a mirror and being angry that the reflection is scowling back at you. If we could just learn to remember the good things people have done for us, even the small things, it starts to shift the atmosphere of our lives. We start to see that most people are just like us, a bit messy, a bit clumsy, and doing their best with what they've got. If we could just offer a little more tolerance to the world, we might find that the world starts to feel a lot more hospitable to us, too. There's this quiet habit we have of talking about people behind their backs. It feels harmless in the moment, doesn't it? A little bit of gossip over lunch, a little bit of venting about someone's shortcomings, but words have a way of leaving a residue. They create a kind of dust in the mind. Even if the person we're talking about never hears us, we hear us. We are the ones living in that energy. I've been trying to be more careful about that, to realize that a single harsh word can start a fire, while a kind word can be the very thing that helps someone else keep going. It takes so much more strength to be the person who stays quiet when everyone else is judging, or to be the one who offers a bit of perspective when things get heated. I've been thinking about the idea of yielding. In our culture, yielding is often seen as a sign of weakness, but there's a massive amount of power in it. It's the difference between a tree that snaps in the wind and the one that bends and survives. When we're in an argument, we feel this desperate need to chase the logic all the way to the end, to make sure the other person admits we were right. But what do we really win? Even if they concede, we've probably left a wound. Maybe the wiser thing is to just let the air stay harmonious, even if the reason is a bit crooked, to leave a way out for the other person and for ourselves. Because once you push someone all the way into a corner, nobody wins. We just end up with more distance between us. It feels like we're all caught in this strange trap of time. We're so busy, aren't we? Always rushing to the next thing, always checking the clock. We say we don't have time to rest, or we don't have time to exercise, or we don't have time to just sit and talk with the people we love. But then, when we get sick, or when a crisis hits, suddenly time appears. We find the time for the doctor, the time for the recovery, the time for the regret. It's a hard lesson to learn, but it's a vital one. If we don't make time for our own well-being now, we're going to be forced to make time for our illness later. Time is the one thing that is perfectly fair. We all get the same 24 hours, but we use them so differently. We treat our lives like a bank account where we're only allowed to make withdrawals, never realizing that the balance is actually getting lower every single day. We worry about money, we worry about status, we worry about what everyone thinks, and then we realize that we're at the end of the journey and we haven't really been present for any of it. It's like driving a car and spending the whole time staring into the rearview mirror. The past is important, it's where we get our maps and our lessons, but the windshield is so much bigger for a reason. It's where the life is actually happening. I saw a child the other day after a heavy rain. He found a snail in the middle of the sidewalk, right in the path of where people were walking. He didn't make a big deal of it. He just reached down, very gently picked it up, and moved it into the grass. His grandmother asked him why he bothered, since the snail probably didn't even know he had saved it, and the boy just looked at her and said, "I know." That stayed with me. We often think that doing something good only matters if there's a witness, or if the person we're helping is grateful, or if it changes the world in some massive way. But maybe the real point of being kind is just what it does to us. It reminds us that we are connected to the world. It keeps us soft. Whether the snail knows or not doesn't matter. The boy knows. He is the one who gets to walk away with a heart that is a little bit more alive. We're so often looking for someone to come and save us, aren't we? We pray for a miracle, or we wait for a leader, or we hope that our partner will finally make us feel complete. But there's a story I like about a person who sees a figure of compassion carrying an umbrella in the rain and asks to be saved. The figure says, "I'm in the rain because I have an umbrella. You're in the rain because you don't. I'm not the one saving me, the umbrella is. If you want to be dry, go find your own umbrella." It sounds a bit harsh at first, but it's actually the most hopeful thing in the world. It means that we have the tools. We don't have to wait for someone else to grant us peace. We can build it ourselves, one small decision at a time. We can choose to be the person who stays calm when the storm hits. We can choose to be the one who doesn't take the bait when someone is trying to start a fight. We can choose to be our own sanctuary. It takes practice, of course. It's not like flipping a switch. It's more like tending a garden. You have to show up every day. You have to pull the weeds of resentment before they get too deep. You have to water the parts of yourself that are trying to grow. And some days, you're just going to be tired. Some days, the weeds are going to feel like they're winning. But if you can just keep that inner world relatively clear, if you can just be a little bit more patient today than you were yesterday, things start to change. Not because the world got easier, but because you got steadier. I've been thinking about how much we complicate things. We think we need a better job, or a bigger house, or more recognition to finally be happy. But then you see someone who has almost nothing, and yet they have this light about them. They're satisfied. And you realize that enough isn't a number. It's a state of mind. It's the realization that right now, in this moment, you have air in your lungs, you have a place to sit, and you have the ability to choose your next thought. That's a massive amount of wealth, if you really stop to look at it. We lose so much of our lives trying to be someone. We want to be the best, the smartest, the most successful, but there's a profound kind of relief in just being no one for a while. To just be a witness to the day, to listen to the wind, to feel the sun on your skin, and to not need anything from it. We're so busy trying to leave a mark on the world that we forget to let the world leave a mark on us. I've started to notice that when I'm at my most frustrated, it's usually because I'm fighting against the way things are. I want the traffic to move faster. I want the person I'm talking to be more reasonable. I want the weather to be better. But the traffic, The person, the weather, they're just doing what they do. My frustration doesn't change them, it only changes me. It's like trying to stop the ocean with a spoon. You just end up wet and tired. If we can learn to just float, to acknowledge the difficulty without letting it sink the boat. I think about the people I've loved and lost. I think about the mistakes I've made that I can never go back and fix. And for a long time, I carried those things like stones in my pockets. They were heavy, and they made the walk so much harder than it needed to be. But eventually, you realize that the past is just a story we tell ourselves. It's not happening now. The only thing that's happening now is this breath, this moment. And in this moment, we are okay. We are always okay. If we can just find the space between our thoughts, it's like that cup of water again. If you hold it for a minute, it's light. If you hold it for an hour, your arm starts to ache. If you hold it all day, your arm becomes paralyzed. The water hasn't changed, only the time you've spent carrying it has. Maybe it's time to just set the cup down for a while, to give ourselves permission to be light, to walk through the rest of the day with our hands open, ready for whatever comes next, without needing to own it or control it. Just being here, in the middle of it all. I've been realizing that there's a strange kind of trap in waiting for someone else to hold the light for us while we're walking through a dark stretch. We all do it. We look for a person, a mentor, or even some grand twist of fate to step in and fix the things that feel broken. But maybe the most honest form of kindness we can show ourselves is to stop waiting for a rescue that might never come. There's a certain strength that only starts to grow when you realize that your own 2 feet are the only ones that can carry you forward. If we can just stay persistent, if we can keep moving even when the path is a little hazy, we eventually start to see a bit of warmth on the horizon. Not because the world changed, but because we stopped leaning so hard on everyone else and started trusting the ground beneath us. There's an old story, one of those parables that sticks to the ribs, about a person caught in a sudden downpour. They're huddled under an awning, watching a figure of grace and compassion walk past, holding an umbrella. The person calls out, "Please, you're the embodiment of mercy. Won't you help me? Let me walk under your umbrella for a while." But the figure just keeps walking and says, "I'm out here in the rain, and you're back there under the roof. Where you are, it's dry. You don't need my help." So the person, thinking they've found a loophole, steps out into the rain and gets soaked. "Now," they say, "now I'm in the rain too. Now can I share your umbrella?" But the figure just shakes their head and says, "I'm in the rain, but I'm not wet because I have an umbrella. You're in the rain, and you're wet because you don't. I'm not saving me, this umbrella is. If you want to be dry, you shouldn't be looking for me. You should be looking for your own umbrella." It's a bit of a sharp lesson, isn't it? It's not meant to be cold, but it is meant to be true. It reminds us that when the storms of life hit, and they always do, the most reliable shelter is the one we've built for ourselves. Praying for someone else to solve our problems is often just a way of avoiding the work of our own lives. If we can learn to be our own sanctuary, if we can find that umbrella of inner calm and resilience, then we aren't at the mercy of the weather anymore. We can walk through the rain and still stay dry on the inside. I've been thinking about the way we handle our relationships too, especially the ones that have started to fade or the ones that ended in a way we didn't expect. It's a heavy realization to admit that we can't necessarily love just one person for our entire lives and expect it to never change. Some people come into our lives and they make us laugh louder than we ever have, or they make us cry harder than we thought possible. They leave a mark that never quite goes away. But then, the connection starts to fray. It's like a pair of shoes you bought because they looked perfect in the window. You put them on, and they're beautiful. But as you start to walk, you realize they don't quite fit. They pinch, they rub, they make your feet ache with every step. You don't want to get rid of them because you remember how much you wanted them and you remember the price you paid. But the longer you insist on wearing them, the more damage you do to yourself. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for your own journey is to just take the shoes off, to admit that as beautiful as they aren't meant for the road you're walking. Holding on to a love that has turned into a source of pain isn't a sign of loyalty. It's just a way of hurting yourself for a little longer than necessary. We lose so much of ourselves when we can't control our own emotions. If we let every disappointment or every slight ruin our day, then even if the world handed us everything we ever wanted, we'd still find a way to let it slip through our fingers. I think of love like a handful of sand. The harder you squeeze it, the faster it pours out between your fingers. It's only when you keep your hand open, relaxed and steady, that the sand actually stays. We want to own things. We want to possess the people we love. But the more we try to bind them to us, the more they start to feel like strangers. There's a specific kind of sadness that comes when someone you were once so close to becomes a stranger again. It's almost worse than never having known them at all. You look at them and you remember the shared language, the private jokes, the way the world felt when you were on the same team. And now, you're just two people passing in the street. But maybe that's just the nature of things. We miss the past not because it was perfect, it rarely was, but because it's a place we can never go back to. It's a door that has been locked. If we can't find a reason to keep going, maybe we just need to remember why we started. We get so lost in the how and the what now that we forget the original impulse that brought us here. Life isn't always going to give us a cheering section. The people who promise to stay might leave when things get difficult. But that doesn't mean the journey wasn't worth it. It just means that the next part of the road is meant to be walked with a different kind of strength. I'm trying to learn the art of knowing enough. There's a beautiful phrase for it, trituk, the idea that being satisfied with what is sufficient is actually the ultimate form of wealth. We're all running this race, aren't we? Trying to get to the finish line, trying to win the prize. But what if life isn't a race at all? What if it's just a slow walk? If the goal is just to experience the walking, then there's no reason to be in such a hurry. I wonder how many of us only realize we were alive when we're taking our very last breath. We spend our lives existing, performing, managing. But are we actually living? To live is to be aware of the breath while it's happening. It's to realize that we have two hands, one to help ourselves and one to reach out to the person standing next to us. It sounds so simple, almost too simple to be true, but that's where the peace is. It's like that flower in the deep, quiet woods. It blooms in a place where no one will ever see it. There's no one to take a picture of it, no one to comment on its color, no one to tell it that its scent is beautiful, and the flower doesn't care. It doesn't feel lonely. It doesn't feel like a failure. It doesn't think about ending its life because it lacks an audience. It just blooms. It gives its fragrance to the wind because that is what it was born to do. It offers its joy to the world, to the entire vast universe, without needing a single person to notice. Maybe we can find a way to live like that. To just be here. To just offer what we have to the day and let the rest of it go. Whether people praise us or ignore us, whether they understand us or misinterpret everything we do, it doesn't change the fact that we are here and we are blooming. And in that blooming, there is a quiet, steady kind of happiness that nothing can take away. I've been thinking about how our lives are like a long journey on a bus, heading toward a destination we all eventually reach. People get on and people get off. Some stay for a long time, and some are only there for a few stops. We want everyone we love to stay until the very end. But that's not how the route works. When someone has to get off the bus, even if we aren't ready to say goodbye. Maybe the best we can do is just wave. To be grateful that they were there for that one stretch of road, even if it was short. Because the next stop is coming, and there will be new people and new views and a different kind of light hitting the windows. It's all just a matter of whether we have the courage to keep looking out the glass instead of staring at the empty seat next to us. We're so tired because we're constantly wrestling with the truth. We're trying to make the bitter parts sweet and the sweet parts stay forever. But a cup of tea is always going to have that initial bite of bitterness. That's what makes the sweetness at the end feel so real. If we can just stop fighting the reality of it all, if we can just accept the tangles and the imperfections and the sudden departures, everything starts to feel a little bit more open. True happiness isn't something we show off to the world. It's something we feel in the quietest part of ourselves. It's not about having a perfect life. It's about having a heart that is willing to experience the life we actually have. We don't have to be successful in the eyes of others. We don't have to be important. We just have to be here. I'm learning to be more patient with the lemon life sometimes hands me. We're told to make lemonade, and that's fine. But maybe we can also just use the lemon to add a bit of zest to the meal. Maybe the sourness is exactly what the moment needs. If we can look at the difficulties with a sense of curiosity instead of dread, they start to look like something else. They start to look like lessons, like a way to grow a little bit more, to understand a little bit more, and to eventually just be a little more at peace with the way the wind is blowing today. I've been sitting with the thought that time, by itself, doesn't actually fix anything. We're told that time heals, or that time makes us wiser, but I'm starting to think that time is just a vessel. It can be filled with growth, or it can be filled with the same old habits, just repeated for decades. You can grow older without ever really growing up. Real maturity, the kind that feels like a quiet weight in your chest, usually only shows up when we're forced to stand face to face with the things that went wrong. It's in those moments, when we're stumbling or dealing with the unexpected, that we actually start to understand the texture of our own lives. There's a specific kind of intelligence that comes from being alone. Not the productive kind of alone where you're checking off a list, but the kind of stillness where there's nowhere to hide from your own thoughts. When there's no audience, no one to impress, we finally have the chance to manage the heart. We can look at our intentions and our fears without the need to perform. And then, when we step back into the world, when we're surrounded by people again, the work changes. It becomes about managing the mouth. It becomes about choosing humility over being the loudest voice in the room. I've noticed that the more I try to learn from others, instead of trying to convince them of what I know, the more luck seems to find its way to me. It's almost as if the world opens up when you stop trying to crowd it with your own ego. We spend so much of our lives obsessing over the size of things. We want a bigger house, a wider reach, a more impressive title. But when you really strip it all back, the happiness of a home doesn't have anything to do with the square footage. It has everything to do with the sound of the laughter inside those walls. You can be in a palace and feel like you're in a tomb if there's no warmth. And you can be in a tiny, cramped apartment and feel like you have everything you need because there's someone there who truly sees you. The most precious things we own, they aren't things at all. They're the people who stay by our side when we're at our most vulnerable. It's not about how many people cheer for you when you're winning. It's about who is there when you're tired, when you're grieving, when you're not sure if you can take another step. We can't force anyone to love us. We can't bargain for it or demand it. The only thing we can do, the only thing we have any control over, is to try and be the kind of person who is worthy of being loved. To be someone who offers a safe place for someone else's heart to land. I was thinking about how our perspective on pain changes as we move through the years. Do you remember being very small? when a scraped knee or a tiny cut felt like the end of the world? We'd cry as if our heart was breaking, mostly because we were shocked by the sensation. But as we get older, we realize that the pain that makes us bleed is the easy kind. It's the tears that fall in silence, the ones that come from a deep, internal ache that are the hardest to bear. But maybe there's a comfort in realizing that, in the grand scheme of things, almost everything is a small matter. Besides the big threshold of birth and the final mystery of death, everything else is just the middle. All the stress, the bills, the misunderstandings, the minor failures, they're just the weather of the day. If we can wake up and decide that, no matter what happens, we're not going to spend the day punishing ourselves, then we've already won a major victory. We can accept the bad things, the messy parts, and still believe in tomorrow, because tomorrow is just another name for a new opportunity. Life seems to be made of these strange halves, doesn't it? Everything exists in a kind of balance. I've been reflecting on how even we, as individuals, are split. We have the part of us that wants to be an angel, to be kind and patient and selfless, and then we have the other part, the shadow, that can be reactive or selfish. We see it in our relationships too. A marriage or a partnership is half about what we build together, the effort we put in every day, and half about what we have to simply accept the parts of the other person that will never change. Our work is half luck and half effort. Our friendships are half about our common ground and half about the respect we show for our differences. Even our happiness is divided. Half of it comes from the way we feel in a moment, and the other half comes from that quiet sense of enough, that deep-seated contentment that doesn't need anything to change to be okay. I've been trying to be more mindful of the things I shouldn't take for granted. It's so easy to let life become a series of shoulds and oughts. We treat our parents like a permanent fixture, forgetting that their time is a finite gift. We treat our partners with a kind of casual neglect, forgetting the miracle of the coincidence that brought us together in the first place. We push our children to be more, forgetting that they are already a whole world just as they are. And we treat ourselves the worst of all. We neglect our bodies, we ignore our need for rest, and we fill our minds with a million anxieties that we would never wish on a friend. We get so caught up in the doing, the accumulation of things and titles and recognition that we forget that we are here to simply be. We worry about what the world thinks, as if the world is even paying attention. But the world is busy with its own worries. I've noticed that the most peaceful people I know are the ones who have learned how to simplify. They don't try to win every argument. They don't try to own every beautiful thing they see. They know that if they have enough to eat, a place to sleep, and a few people who truly know them, they are doing better than most. They've learned how to delete the memories that don't serve them, the old grudges, the embarrassments, the slights, and keep the heart clear for what's happening right now. There's an old observation that the sun doesn't rise earlier just because we're in a hurry, and the moon doesn't stay out later just because we have more to say. The universe has its own rhythm, and it's completely indifferent to our plans. We spend so much energy trying to fix the world, trying to make it more convenient or more predictable. But maybe the real work isn't to fix the world, but to find a way to stay round even when the world feels jagged. To be the person who can maintain a sense of peace even when things are going wrong. I think about how much time we waste on the what-ifs. What if I had taken that other job? What if I hadn't said that thing 10 years ago? But the past is a locked room. We can look through the window, but we can't go back inside. The only place we can actually do anything is right here. If we've made mistakes, and we all have, maybe the best way to make amends is just to be better today. To be a little more patient, a little more honest, a little more present. It feels like we're all looking for the same thing, a bit of quiet in a very noisy world. We look for it in vacations, in purchases, in the approval of others, but those are all just temporary fixes. The real quiet, the kind that actually lasts, is something you have to cultivate on the inside. It's a decision to stop fighting the reality of your own life, to stop comparing your inside to everyone else's outside. I find myself sitting and just watching the way the light moves across the room late in the afternoon. There's no agenda in the light. It doesn't care if the room is clean or if the person sitting there is successful. It just shines. And maybe that's the goal, to just shine. To offer whatever warmth we have to the people who cross our path, and to not worry so much about whether they've earned it or if they're going to give it back. We're all just passing through, aren't we? It's a short trip. All things considered, it seems a waste to spend it being angry or small-minded. If we can just hold on to a little bit of that childhood wonder, the part of us that isn't afraid to feel, the part of us that still thinks the world is a pretty miraculous place, then maybe we're doing okay. Maybe we don't need the big house or the perfect life. Maybe we just need to know how to breathe and how to stay a little bit more open to the next breath. I've noticed that when I stop trying to control every detail, when I stop trying to calculate the best possible outcome for my own benefit, a certain kind of space opens up. It's like the ocean. You can't control the waves, and you certainly can't stop the tide. But you can learn how to float. You can learn how to move with the water instead of fighting against it. And once you stop fighting, the whole experience changes. You start to notice the sky. You start to notice the way the water feels against your skin. You realize that you were never in danger of sinking. You were just too tired from trying to hold yourself up. I've been sitting here thinking about how we measure a life. We talk about it in years or decades, but when you're just sitting quietly, it feels much smaller than that. It feels almost as if a whole life is really just 5 days long. There is the day before, the long history that brought us here. The ancestors and parents we should probably thank more often for the simple fact that we get to see the sunrise. Then there is yesterday, the things we did, the mistakes we made, the successes we're still holding on to. We can't change yesterday, but we can look at it to see where we tripped so we don't fall the same way again. Then there's today, the only day that actually has any heat in it, the only one where we can actually move our hands and feet. Then tomorrow, which is always full of promises and shadows. And finally, there's that day after, the future we're all building toward. When you look at it that way, everything feels a bit more urgent, doesn't it? But also, somehow, more manageable. You don't have to fix a whole century. You just have to be present for today. It's easy to get caught up in the what-ifs. What if I hadn't hesitated? What if I had been luckier? But I'm starting to believe that luck is just what happens when you keep showing up. If we can just take the failures of yesterday and use them as a foundation instead of a weight, then tomorrow starts to look less like a threat and more like a possibility. We spend so much time waiting for the perfect moment to be happy, but yesterday is already gone and tomorrow isn't here yet. All we have is this breathing, right now. This room, this silence. If we can work hard today, then the harvest of the day after will take care of itself. It's the natural way of things, like the way night follows day without anyone having to tell it to. I've been noticing how many things in our lives come in these strange, imperfect halves. We like to think of ourselves as good people, but if we're honest, we're all a bit of a mix. We're half angel and half something a bit more earthly, a bit more prone to mistakes. Our relationships are the same. A marriage is half about the work we put in and half about the things we just have to learn to live with. Our children are half what we teach them and half their own mysterious nature that we have to respect. Even our work, it's half effort and half just being in the right place at the right time. It feels like the secret to a quiet heart is just accepting those halves. We stop demanding that everything be 100% perfect. We look at our partners, our friends, our parents, and we stop asking them to be saints. We just let them be human. We give a little more than we take. We stay a little closer than we have to. And we learn that enough is a much more beautiful word than more. You don't need the biggest house or the most expensive things. You just need a place where the air feels clear and the people inside are kind to one another. Whether you're driving a beat-up car or a luxury sedan, as long as you get home safely and you're happy to be there, the rest is just details. I remember an old story about a man standing under a roof during a storm. He sees a figure of great compassion passing by with an umbrella, and he begs for help, asking to be saved from the rain. But the figure just keeps walking and says, "I'm in the rain, and you're under the roof. You don't need to be saved." So the man runs out into the downpour and says, "Now I'm in the rain. Now will you save me?" But the figure just shakes their head and says, "The umbrella is what's keeping me dry. You're wet because you don't have one. Don't look to me for salvation, look for your own umbrella." It's a bit of a tough truth, but there's so much freedom in it. It means that when the storms of life hit, we don't have to wait for a miracle. We can build our own shelter. We can find our own peace. Relying on others for our happiness is like trying to stay dry by standing in someone else's shadow. Eventually, they're going to move. But if we can find that stillness inside ourselves, then we can walk through any storm and stay dry on the inside. It's about not letting the world dictate our internal weather. If we can cultivate a bit of patience, a bit of tolerance, and a lot of honesty, then we've found our umbrella. I've been thinking about the things we shouldn't do, the ways we accidentally poison our own lives. We get so caught up in being right or being first. We get angry at people who don't deserve it, or we spend our energy on things that don't matter. We chase after desires that have no end, and we let our pride keep us from saying "I'm sorry" or "I love you" until it's too late. It's a tragedy, really, how much time we waste being small-minded. Life is so short, it's just a flash of light between two darknesses. It seems like a waste to spend it being anything other than kind. If you look at the world long enough, you realize that everything is in motion. Nothing stays still. The waves keep hitting the shore, the seasons keep turning, and our feelings keep shifting like clouds. Sometimes the waves are quiet, and the sea is like glass. And for some reason, that's when we're the most afraid. We're so used to the chaos that the silence feels suspicious. We think we have to stir something up just to feel like we're still here. But maybe the silence is the whole point. Maybe the happiness isn't in the excitement or the noise, but in the moments when the water is perfectly still and we can finally see our own reflection. We spend our lives as if we're on a long-distance bus. We're so focused on the destination, the retirement, the promotion, the someday, that we never look out the window. We don't notice the trees, or the light on the hills, or the person sitting in the next seat. And then we get to the end of the line, and we realize that the ride was the life. The destination was just a place to stop. I want to be the kind of person who is aware of the breath while it's happening. Not just existing, but actually being here. I think about that flower in the middle of a deep, silent forest. It doesn't need anyone to tell it it's beautiful. It doesn't need to be on a map. It just opens up because it's time to open. It gives its scent to the wind, not for a reward, but just because that is what it is. If we could live like that, just blooming where we are, offering what we have without constantly checking to see if anyone is watching, we might find that the world feels a lot more peaceful. I've been learning to be okay with the bitterness of the tea. You know, life isn't all sugar. There are moments that are sharp and moments that are hard to swallow. But if you can just sit with the bitterness, If you can just endure it without trying to run away, eventually you start to notice a subtle sweetness underneath. It's the sweetness of resilience. It's the quiet joy of knowing that you can go through something difficult and still come out the other side with your heart intact. We're all just trying our best, aren't we? We're all dealing with the same what-ifs and the same if-onlys. But maybe the if-onlys are just ghosts. Maybe the only thing that's real is the way we treat the person in front of us right now. The way we handle a lemon that's a bit too sour, or a day that's a bit too long. If we can just stay a little more simple, if we can just be a little more generous with our smiles and a little more careful with our words, then maybe we've understood the assignment. I find myself just breathing in the quiet of this moment. Not looking for an answer, not trying to solve anything, just being here. It's enough. It's always been enough. We just had to stop long enough to notice it. And as the day fades and the night comes on, maybe we can just let go of the need to be anything other than what we are. Just a small part of a very large, very beautiful, very mysterious world. Just a breath, just a heartbeat, just a quiet thought that doesn't need to go anywhere.